We truly live in a golden age of artistic expression. The tools we have at our disposal to create and the means we have to share those creations are more accessible and visible than ever before. This degree of control that creators have over their intended experience usually extends to the medium they use to create, allowing for complete creative control of an artist's vision, even at the beginner level. So why was Red Dead Redemption 2 a video game? We'll come back to that specific question later. Let's talk about its underlying meaning. Why was any work of art made in the medium that it was? This is a question that I felt compelled to ask ever since I dove into Subnautica and learned why some games simply need to be, well, games in order to provoke the intended reaction from the player, viewer, listener, or whatever of the work. Subnautica is a trap. It lured me into its grips with a very distinguishable, vibrant, almost cartoon-like visual style. It seemed to draw something out of me, some sort of instinctual need to explore. That is, until I did. I'm not sure I've ever felt the same sense of helplessness in any other game. Even simple actions like exploring open, well-lit areas came with a sense of dread as I watched my O2 meter deplete, or I somehow got even thirstier. See, Subnautica manages to effortlessly provoke one of its intended emotions, terror, because it doesn't need to suspend your disbelief in order to scare you. You know what it's like to be underwater. You know there's real giant monsters in our own oceans. You know what it's like to not have 24/7 access to the exact food that you want. Bringing out these two fundamental emotions in me so effectively really began to make me question why I hadn't felt fear like that while playing any other game. And for that matter, any movie, show, or book either. In this case, I feel as though it has to be attributed to Subnautica's excellent sense of direction, that being its relative lack of one. You may receive a suggestion from your onboard AI, or an event in-game may cause you to change direction, but overall, you're free to explore the alien oceanscape of 4546B as you wish. Or at least as your oxygen tank wishes. All that said, what if Subnautica were a movie? Could the story of the only known living human in this ocean be told through the silver screen, or binge-watched over a long weekend? And if so, could it provoke the same brick-shitting terror that it does in the game? Personally, I don't think so. Games usually aren't experienced in a static format the same way that other mediums are, and how can you expect to dynamically provoke emotions with a static medium? Think about it like this. You can't tell Kanye that it was the Spartans, not the Romans. You don't know how to run a country any better after watching Game of Thrones, for a few reasons. You don't gain any hearing buffs after hearing Michael Fassbender play that flute every single time you watch your official collector's edition copy of Alien Covenant.
Masterful. Yes.
But as I'm writing this, I know that Dylan is booting up the game for the first time and will experience the same first moments as me. Where our experiences may differ somewhat, one thing that's almost guaranteed to be the same is the intrinsic reward of overcoming fear. Another sensation that Subnautica effortlessly provides is accomplishment, something that all games strive for regardless of genre. I mentioned other mediums not being able to provoke emotions in nearly as dynamic of a way that games allow, and this overcoming of fear really establishes exactly that point, and why Subnautica has to be a video game. When you finally push into the cave beneath you in order to obtain some sulfur and make it back to safety, you've already broken down a major barrier that the game has built up. You. No one else. Not even Michael Fassbender. This personalization is most certainly possible through other mediums, but how effective is it really? Is the feeling of relief when a potential victim escapes the clutches of a murderer in a slasher flick even comparable to narrowly dodging some nightmare creature while you're just trying to get some food? In my humble opinion, that's a big old nope. To empathize with the character is not the same as experiencing things firsthand, especially when you have the power to do more than just yell. The odds may be stacked against you, and the game may discourage you from responding in violent ways, but you do possess more power to act than your mom on the sidelines of your soccer game, realizing that she should have probably just bought you the drum set, you uncoordinated. Let me stop projecting for long enough to get back to Red Dead Redemption 2. Maybe you've heard of it. It was my most anticipated game of 2018. I loved the first two games, and I knew I was going to love the third. Rockstar were the tried and true champs of the sandbox experience in my mind. This was a no-brainer purchase given the length of the development time and the tools that Rockstar had at their disposal at this point. My optimism actually followed me through the first 10 or so hours of the game. I mean, look at this thing, the detail. The way the snow crunched under Arthur's boots, the long contemplative rise through the American wilderness, the real hashtag rise and grind attitude of this hashtag squad, and their wonderfully written dynamics, the long contemplative rise through the American wilderness, random encounters with NPCs that breathe life into the world, the long contemplative ride through the American wilderness. Wait, there's just too much reflection in my escapist activity. Red Dead Redemption 2 is woefully loyal to its source material, being the American Western. That means it's in no rush to set its major points in motion. It's a stew, not a stir-fry. Everything you do takes a long time. Everything. This slow approach that Red Dead takes certainly sets it apart from other sandbox games that I've played in the past, and for that, I have to commend it. It's one of the few games I've finished in my adult life. I could just never shake the feeling that the game impressed me more than it entertained me. The character development and core story kept me going through to the end, but by the time I got there, I couldn't help but feel as though all the game got in the way of both of those things. A wonderful exploration of the dynamic between order and chaos, and the domestication of humans as a species, is buried under Horse-Ass Jiggle Simulator 2018. Since that's what the other half of my time was spent doing. So I must ask, would this have been an issue if Red Dead Redemption 2 were one of the Western movies like it was inspired by? Could its messages have been delivered in a more efficient way if I didn't have to slog through multiple 5+ second animations anytime I tried to do very normal video game action? Honestly, I believe so. I'm not saying that Red Dead Redemption 2 isn't a good game, far from it in fact. It's a technological feat and is certainly crafted with a lot of love and money, but it's not that fun. I kept playing because I wanted to see what happened, not because the core gameplay loops were so interesting or intriguing that I couldn't put it down for 40 hours. I feel it's only fair to judge games as games. So if the game component of your release is lacking, I have to ask, why on earth was Red Dead Redemption 2 not just a movie to begin with? In a time where the volume of content available at any moment is staggering, it's become more and more difficult to stomach the idea of sinking multiple days' worth of time into a game that uses it on mundane or unnecessary tasks with the promise of a story-based payout. Games can be a vessel for basically every other medium of art to coexist at the same time, but at their core, they're still just that. Games. Designed to be played. A kinesthetic experience as well, not purely audio and visual. The problem comes into play when we start to overlook the core issues with gameplay to better see the audio-visual experience. I'm not saying that games can't be designed as more of an interactive painting or movie, but I do think it's important to convey the intention to your audience before taking hours of their time. Ultimately, you can always tell a linear story through the medium of film or literature. You can't, however, make your viewer grin with glee while finally flying past a creature that gave them grief at one point in a submersible that they built themselves. Subnautica, unlike a lot of other survival games, does indeed have a plot with a beginning, middle, and end. In theory, you could make a movie about all of the happenings of the lone human swimmer on 4546B and still tell the same story, but it would be shitty. Because watching his noob ass swim to the Aurora right away just to find a Reaper waiting for him isn't nearly as gut-wrenching as doing it yourself. The youth of games as a medium has sort of led to a slower acceptance of the medium as a fine art, or an alternative means for entertainment, especially with those born in generations prior to the time they were available en masse. I find this to be hugely disappointing, as some of them are the most in-depth, painstaking, and profound examples of artistic achievement that people have to offer. That being said, there are plenty of people from all ages who have enjoyed games for decades now, and I'm sure that any of them can tell you at least one experience that they've had playing a game that they'll never forget. And it's because it happened to them, which is something that they couldn't say about a work of art in any other medium, regardless of quality. Thanks for watching.